Imagine living in a small, quiet town where everyone knows each other and danger seems like a distant, almost unreal concept. Now, imagine that this sense of security is suddenly ripped away from you when a 13-year-old girl mysteriously disappears just a few meters from her home, turning what seemed like an ordinary day into an unimaginable nightmare. This shocking case, which shook the foundations of Italy, reveals a disturbing truth. Evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, and what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about safety, trust, and justice. If you think you've heard terrifying stories before, prepare to be surprised. Yara felt the cold of late November as she adjusted her backpack and closed the door behind her. The sky was already darkening, and the streetlights were beginning to flicker on, casting long, distorted shadows along the sidewalks. The 13-year-old girl, with her dark hair tied back in a ponytail, walked determinedly down the narrow street leading to the sports center. With each step, the sound of dry leaves crunching under her sneakers was muffled by the wind that was starting to blow harder, bringing with it the smell of chimneys from the nearby houses. She didn't plan to stay long, just to return the stereo to her gymnastics coach. As she walked, Yara observed the old, picturesque facades of the houses in Brembate di Sopra, the small town where she lived with her family. The moss-covered stone walls seemed to hold secrets from past generations, and Yara, despite her young age, had always felt a certain fascination for those buildings. But that night, something felt different. The silence, which usually calmed her, now caused a subtle, almost imperceptible unease. When she arrived at the sports center, the interior lights shone with a familiar intensity, and the echoes of voices and laughter from the other attendees filled the space. Yara handed the stereo to the coach, exchanged a few quick words with her friends, and was soon ready to head home. But as she stepped outside, she was startled by the sound of a car approaching. A red, old model, almost silent, stopped a few meters from where she stood. Two men were inside, and one of them waved at her. Yara hesitated, feeling a chill run down her spine, but decided to ignore them and continue on her way. However, the car followed her slowly, and when Yara finally looked back, she saw the two men getting out of the vehicle. They called out to her, trying to start a friendly conversation, but the tone of their voices was disturbingly insistent. The girl quickened her pace, now with her heart pounding, and turned into the first alley she found, hoping to lose them. But the footsteps behind her became faster and more aggressive. Yara knew she was in danger but had nowhere to run. The alley was narrow and ended at a high fence. She felt panic take over, but something kept her from screaming. As night fell completely and Yara hadn't returned home, her parents began to worry. Yara's mother, Mora, tried calling her daughter's cell phone several times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. It was unusual for Yara to do that, especially without notifying them. Mora's unease quickly turned into panic, and she called her husband, Fulvio, who was working a night shift. He tried to calm her, saying their daughter might have lost track of time at the sports center. However, as minutes turned into hours, the anxiety grew. Without further delay, Mora contacted the local police, and soon the small town was on alert. Officers, family members, and neighbors mobilized to search for Yara, combing every street and corner she could have walked through. With every door they knocked on, the hope of finding a sign of the girl was mixed with the growing fear that something terrible had happened. Letitia Ruggieri, an experienced detective from the neighboring city, was called in to lead the investigation. With a serious demeanor and sharp eyes, she immediately began to piece together the puzzle that was starting to form. At the sports center, Yara's coach confirmed that she had been there and left around 6:30 p.m. Her friends said they saw Yara leave alone, without showing any signs that something was wrong. Determined not to let any clue slip away, Letitia requested to review nearby security camera footage. But frustration soon set in. There was nothing relevant, only a glimpse of the red car parked on the street. Tracking down the car's owners became a priority, but without visible license plates, the task seemed almost impossible. Meanwhile, the police followed the clues they had. The last signal from Yara's cell phone had been detected in a small village called Mello, about 10 kilometers away. However, this information made no sense. How could a 13-year-old girl on foot have traveled that far in such a short time? Letitia knew this could only mean one thing. Yara had been taken by car. The tension was palpable at the police station as the officers mapped out the possible routes the abductor could have taken. But the feeling of helplessness grew with each minute that passed without new leads. Days turned into weeks, and the anguish of Yara's parents was visible in every interview they gave to the press. The story of the missing girl had spread throughout Italy, and people across the country anxiously followed each new piece of information. Letitia, despite the pressure, remained cold and calculating. She knew that every wrong move could cost Yara's life. So, she decided to employ a bold tactic. She requested the location records of all cell phones that were in Mello on the night of the disappearance. The data began to pour in, more than 15,000 phone numbers, each representing a potential lead. A special team was formed to monitor the conversations of these people, hoping that one of them would slip up. And, in fact, a few days later, an officer heard a phrase that chilled the investigation team. "Forgive me, Lord, I didn't kill her." The words, spoken in a desperate tone, came from a man named Mohammed Fikri, a construction worker from Morocco who lived in the area. Letitia ordered Fikri to be detained immediately, but when the police arrived at his residence, they discovered that he had left the country and was on a ship bound for Morocco. Panic gripped the investigation, but the Italian authorities, determined not to let this lead slip away, managed to intercept the ship and bring Fikri back. The man was subjected to intense interrogations, and his house was searched. In the trunk of his car, the police found a blood-stained mattress. The hope of finally having found the culprit was high. However, the results of the laboratory tests came as a cold shock. The blood was not Yara's, and the translation of the phone recording had been misinterpreted. In the end, Fikri was innocent. The investigation, which seemed to be on the verge of a major breakthrough, returned to square one, leaving Letitia and her team desolate. Meanwhile, Yara's case continued to be front-page news, and the pressure on the police increased. Every day without answers was a blow to the public's confidence in the investigators' ability to solve the case. 3 months after Yara's disappearance, on February 26, 2011, a man playing with his remote-controlled airplane in a field near Brembate di Sopra made a gruesome discovery. While retrieving the airplane that had landed in the middle of dense vegetation, he stumbled upon a body in an advanced state of decomposition. When the police arrived on the scene, they quickly identified it as Yara, still wearing the same clothes she had on the night she disappeared. Next to the body were her belongings: an iPod, house keys, a SIM card, and the battery from her cell phone, but the phone itself was missing. The news of the discovery deeply shook the small town and the entire country. Letitia, visiting the scene, felt a mixture of relief at finally finding the girl and despair at not having been able to find her in time. The forensic pathologists quickly identified the cause of death: multiple stab wounds, but there were no signs of sexual assault. However, some pieces of clothing were displaced, suggesting an attempt or intent. With more detailed forensic analysis, 2 male DNA profiles were found, one on her glove and another on the phone battery. These findings renewed the investigation's hopes but also presented new challenges. The DNA samples were small and difficult to analyze, and there were no matches in criminal databases. Even so, Letitia and her team decided to explore a radical approach, collecting DNA samples from all of Yara's acquaintances and people who were in Brembate di Sopra and Mello that night. This process was slow and exhausting, involving 3 different laboratories, but it was the only concrete lead they had. While the analysis continued, the investigators also began to explore other possibilities. Letitia had the idea of collecting DNA samples from all visitors to a nightclub near the field where Yara's body was found. The club was known for attracting shady characters, and Letitia suspected that the killer could be one of those frequent visitors. Her hypothesis was confirmed when the laboratory found a partial DNA match with one of the visitors, a man named Damiano. The discovery that Damiano was closely related to the killer plunged Letitia into a new phase of the investigation. The man was interrogated, but it soon became clear that he was not the culprit, as he was out of the country at the time of the crime. However, the genetic link suggested that the killer might be a close relative, perhaps even a brother. What initially seemed like a breakthrough soon became a complicated web of family secrets. The investigation revealed that Damiano's mother had worked as a housekeeper in Yara's home for over a decade, but this did not provide any additional clues. With no other options, Letitia and her team began to trace Damiano's family tree. It was a daunting task, requiring patience and determination, especially since many of the family connections dated back generations. They discovered that the killer's possible grandfather, Jeppy, had 2 sons, but neither was the culprit. This realization left the investigators perplexed, forcing them to consider the possibility that Jeppy had an illegitimate child, a secret buried in the sands of time. The efforts to uncover more about Jeppy's personal life led the investigators to a spa he used to frequent in the 1960s, always alone. Although the search for women who might have been involved with him was extensive and time-consuming, it did not yield immediate results. The media, always eager for new developments, began to speculate about the possibility of an illegitimate child, fueling the frenzy around the case. Letitia, however, could not afford to be distracted by speculation. She knew that the answer was somewhere in that complex family web. It wasn't until 2014, after 3 years of investigation, that a lead directed the investigators to Esther Arzuffi, a woman who had connections to Jeppy and whose DNA sample had already been collected earlier. Initially, the DNA tests had shown no connection to the killer, but a reanalysis revealed a shocking error. The DNA of the killer's mother had been compared to Yara's DNA, not to the unknown sample. When the test was finally corrected, the truth came to light. Esther was the killer's mother, and her son, Massimo Bassetti, would become the focus of the investigation. Massimo Bassetti, a construction worker, led a seemingly normal life in Brembate di Sopra. Married, with children, he was a respected citizen in the community. However, Letitia knew that to catch him, she needed definitive proof. With the help of a roadside checkpoint, she managed to obtain a saliva sample from Bassetti disguised as a sobriety test. The sample was immediately sent to the laboratory, and when the results came back, Letitia had the confirmation she had been waiting for. Bassetti's DNA perfectly matched the DNA found on Yara's underwear. Bassetti was arrested on June 16, 2014, and the entire country paused to witness the conclusion of one of the most shocking criminal cases in recent history. During the trial, disturbing details about Bassetti emerged. His internet history revealed dark and inappropriate interests. Additionally, security cameras captured his car, without license plates, near the sports center on the night Yara disappeared. For Letitia, all this evidence pointed to a premeditated plan, carefully executed by Bassetti. But the trial brought new twists. Bassetti's defense presented Sylvia, a gym instructor, as a possible suspect due to the fact that her blood was found on Yara's jacket. Sylvia, however, could not explain how her blood ended up there, claiming she did not remember the events of that night. This detail cast a shadow of doubt over Bassetti's guilt, but in the end, the court found the evidence against him overwhelming. Bassetti was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2016, but the story did not end there. Additional revelations about his personal life, including the fact that he was not the biological father of his children and that Esther also had another child out of wedlock, continued to fuel conspiracy theories. Despite all the controversies, most people believed that Bassetti was, in fact, Yara Gambarejo's killer. However, the question of Silvia's role still lingers, unsettling those who followed the case. To this day, Bassetti's fate and the dark secrets surrounding this case continue to haunt Italy's collective imagination. Now that you've delved into the chilling details of this shocking case, it's impossible not to wonder. Are you really safe where you live? Have you ever considered how many times you've blindly trusted that appearances were harmless? This case is a disturbing reminder that evil can hide anywhere, even in the places where we feel most secure. And you, what are you doing to ensure you don't become the next victim? Are you prepared to face the truths you prefer to ignore? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you would do differently, and how this story has changed your perspective. If you want to continue learning about cases like this, where reality surpasses fiction and forces us to confront the hidden dangers around us, subscribe now to the Spooky Stories channel and activate notifications. Don't let the next big mystery slip by. Always be prepared, informed, and alert. After all, knowledge is your best defense. Welcome to Spooky Stories. I'm Milo, your guide through the chilling and the unknown. Here, we dive into terrifying tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Join our community of thrill seekers, and let's explore the darkness together. If you're curious about how I keep my concentration, efficiency, performance, and mental health at their peak every day, I'm going to share with you 2 resources that I use daily in my video creation routine. First, breathing for sleep. This method is essential for my deep, restful nights, ensuring I wake up refreshed and ready to create high-quality content. And the best part? It's super easy to incorporate into your routine. And then there's the 7 seconds at-home ritual. This ritual is backed by 4 neuroscience studies and helps to supercharge my brain power, keeping my focus sharp throughout the entire day. Want to try these resources and feel the difference in your routine? The links are right here in the video description and pinned in the comments. Don't miss this chance to elevate your productivity and mental well-being. Now that you understand the dark side that can lurk behind the quest for fame and validation on social media, it's time to reflect. Are you prepared to face the consequences of your online actions? Do you really know who is on the other side of the screen? Or are you just being lulled into a false sense of security and control? The truth is, in the digital age, the line between admirer and predator can be thinner than you think. So, how will you protect your privacy and safety moving forward? And, more importantly, how will you use this knowledge to navigate the vast online world more consciously and safely? If you want to keep learning about the hidden dangers lurking in the shadows of online life and understand how to protect yourself, subscribe now to the Spooky Stories channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any new stories and can continue deepening your knowledge on topics that could literally save your life. Let's journey together towards a safer and more informed life. Are you ready for this change?